Okay.
Yep, we are ready.
Great. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching this from. My name is Faniel Wendy, and I am excited to welcome you all to our October installment of our seminar series. So this is really much a conversation that when I started doing these, were very much one-on-ones with founders and leaders of organizations, and they've turned into this wonderful space for us to have conversations broadly and learn about what they're doing. So SAI is an incubator and a think tank bringing together practitioners and scholars who are working at the interface of science and society. They're building programs, they're doing research, working to bridge the gap between science and society, exploring questions of literacy, questions of access, diversity. And so when I started this organization, I was looking for a community of people like myself that were struggling, trying to build these programs and ask interesting questions at that interface. And so we have now, over the past years, continued to grow into what we are today. And so to get going, I wanted to first acknowledge, do a land acknowledgement, which I think is really important. We're all coming from many, many different places. So we acknowledge that we live, work, and learn on the traditional lands of many tribes of indigenous peoples across North America. We acknowledge the past, present, and future human impact our communities have on indigenous ways of life and the land that we inhabit. We honor with gratitude the land itself as a living entity that supports countless interconnected beings and the ongoing connections of indigenous peoples to these waters, lands, plants, and animals. As we continue to gather virtually from around the country, we encourage you to learn more about the indigenous peoples who have stewarded and who continue to steward the land that you inhabit, and continue to seek ways to honor and cultivate meaningful relationships with indigenous peoples, non-human animals, and the land and water. So I really encourage you to visit our acknowledgement online and see what you can do to both educate yourself, contribute time, money to the charities and groups that are working to bring attention to this as well. And so with that, I would like to first tell you a little bit about my work at SAI, and then I will lead into introducing our speakers for today. So at SAI, beside being the boss, not the boss, but the running of leading the organization, I run the MLab, the Muindi Lab. So I encourage you all to take a look at our website, my lab's website, themavic.org/Muindi Lab, where we study the development of the anthropogenic connections between science and society. And you're probably wondering, what on earth does that mean? So fundamentally, it just means I am fascinated by understanding how, the human equation of that connection. And so if you look at our work, we divide it into three bins, if you will: tool development, research, and program development. So the anthropogenic part is really anthropology. So I'm really fascinated with human sort of questions. How do these connections develop? What is the human component in that development? So you can look at our previous tools, for example, the Journal of Stories in Science, check it out, which is really, really awesome. That has now been integrated to platforms at Harvard and so many other places. Our research, we just published just last year, one of our last set of papers exploring actually the database in the Story in Science database, which I think is being now cited a couple of times. And also program development. So the fellows program itself at SAI and the summer internships were born out of the lab, and it's been really wonderful to just see them merge out from the lab and continue to grow out into the wide world. And so the lab, I am one of two labs at SAI, and we, again, do both research and engineering, and just want to give you a flavor of our work. And if you're interested to learn more, collaborate, just go to our website and email me, and I'll be happy to chat with you further. And I'm one of many residents that is here at SAI. And so with that said, today I am super excited to welcome Lyndsey and Kilan. And this has been a long time coming. We connected, I don't remember how many months ago. Let's see, it was just a really friendly conversation. And I knew immediately that I wanted to to ask them to come and tell us their story. That's really what ultimately this is. Tell us your story in terms of what First Star is doing. Well, I want to learn more about the STEAM Academy. And so I wanted to just say a few words about each of them because they are both really well sort of connected. Lyndsey is the Chief Executive Officer at First Star. And so First Star is a nonprofit working to ensure youth have the academic life skills and adult support needed to transition to higher education and adulthood successfully. I met her during my time at Spelman, and it seems such a long time ago, but we were both in the NIMCOR program, and she's gone on to do such amazing things. And if you look at her portfolio of work that she's done, she's truly committed to the youth. And I really mean that. The commitment to the youth is really, that's sort of inspiring for me. Experience with Teach for America, being a principal at a middle school, and just recently reading the letter, her CEO letter to First Star. I was just impressed and inspired, looking at that energy that you showcase to your community. So joining her today, Dr. Kilan Ashad-Bishop. So she's a scientist by training, earned her PhD in cancer biology, and she's the inaugural director of First Star National STEAM Academy. And we've had some really intense discussions earlier on, Kilan, if you may recall, not long ago, where we were just brainstorming just about what the Academy is doing, what are areas we can collaborate. And so today, the two of you will be doing a really fascinating talk about the innovation and representation, engaging foster youth with science and social justice. They'll be discussing the design and implementation of this program and the impacts it's had so far. At SAI, we love to talk design, to talk impact with founders, because that's what we learn. We learn about what's working, what isn't, and what can we do better in our own work. So Lyndsey and Kilan, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our space.
We are happy to be here, Fanuel. Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad you didn't share how many years ago it's been, because some people might not be completely sure. So let's leave them in that ambiguous zone of that was just a few years ago that we were in college, undergrad. We were in an honors research program. And I remember meeting you. We ended up going to Washington, D.C. and presenting, I think, at the NIH, some science work that we had done independently at our different campuses, Fanuel at Morehouse and my work at Spelman. So I think one thing to consider with the folks that are on this call is that your science background, there's a lot that you can do with science. And I never thought that I would move into nonprofit and become a nonprofit CEO with science under my belt as my area of study in undergrad. And ultimately, when I became a teacher through Teach for America, I taught science. So there are a lot of things to consider in terms of the world in front of you when you're thinking about career. But back to the matter at hand, and that is to discuss First Star, and it's also to delve deeper into our newest initiative, the First Star STEAM Academy. So I'm going to start off with a few points about who we are, First Star. So our mission, Fanuel mentioned our mission, but what we've realized now is we are starting to expand the work of First Star. So not only do we have our 14 academies, and I'll get into that in a few moments, we now have our National STEAM Academy, which is a virtual learning platform. We also have a robust alumni program for our young people that graduate from the First Star Academy. And then we also do coalition building. So we have some policy work that's happening in California to support young people in care throughout the state. And we also have federal work that we have going on that has to do with ending for-profit foster care. So that does I wanted to sort of provide a whole picture of the First Star organization. But of course, the part of our organization that ends up receiving the most accolades is our direct service work, and that's through our academies. In 1999, our currently, who's still our president and our co-founder, President Peter, started First Star. We started First Star as a policy advocacy organization. So the goal was to work with different child welfare agencies across the country and basically rate them according to very specific metrics around child welfare to ensure that students and young people in the child welfare system were receiving the proper resources to then support them as they transition beyond the child welfare system. Just a quick point of clarification for those of you on the call that aren't as familiar with child welfare, foster youth, etc. A young person that ends up in a foster care system, which means that they are now the responsibility of the state or of the county. They end up in the foster care system because of abuse, poverty that generally leads to neglect, or abandonment. And abandonment can look a few different ways. One could be that your parent has gotten deeply ill and has passed away, and they don't have family in the area. And this happens sometimes for our migrant families, folks that have immigrated to the United States, and they immigrate with just themselves and their children. They pass away for one reason or another, and their children have to end up in the foster care system. The issues that generally drive youth in the foster care system are generally around abuse and neglect. And so that is the basis of the foster system and why a young person might end up in America's foster care system. There are about 440,000 youth at any given moment in America's child welfare system. So again, in 1999, we started off fully policy, focusing on these huge bureaucracies and trying to understand what they were really doing to support young people that were now their full responsibility. About 10 years later, Peter worked with another individual and they wanted to shift the model to focus on direct service. We've talked about it, we have written about it, we have gone to Congress and addressed leadership about the child welfare system. Well, now we actually want to get to the bottom of things and we want to provide the intervention and the support. So in 2011, First Star shifted its focus to our academy model. Our first partner was UCLA. We were incredibly happy, of course, to have Chancellor Block on board. And from there, we have grown our academy model to 14 sites throughout the United States. And of course, in 2021, we started our first virtual academy, and that is the STEAM Academy. So I would love everyone to spend, it takes about 4 minutes, but it's our First Star is Family video. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get a holistic view of First Star and what we do. You know what? I need to open up a link with our First Star's Family video. So give me one moment.
And as you do that, I think it follows you're wondering, these visuals are being presented by Prezi. So definitely inspiring to see. So definitely check them out and see how you can incorporate it in your own presentations.
I agree. It is actually really great platform. Thousands. Okay, so share my screen. Of youth age out of the foster care system each year, completely unprepared for independence. Only half of foster youth graduate high school, and less than 10% ever begin college. Within 4 years of aging out, half are unemployed, nearly half will be incarcerated, and a third become homeless.
I've had approximately 12 maybe, give or take, 12 placements.
I want to say more than like 10 places, houses, homes.
This is my 5th foster placement in 3 years.
And each time it was a different house, different school, different friends. You have to like start over.
The hand I was dealt was just different.
My name is Rosario.
My name is Justin.
My name is Sarah. My name is Tiffany.
My name is Michael.
Linda, Linda.
One of the aspects of our program that's really special is that when we commit to our young people and we say that you join First Star, we are going to get you through high school, we do exactly that. We are there to support our scholars with all of their dreams and aspirations.
My biggest hope for my students is that they graduate, that they go to college, and to just believe in themselves.
We think we can dramatically increase the number of these kids who go to college and thrive in college.
These kids are our responsibility, and I feel that First Star is one of the few organizations that really respects them and honors them as full citizens and humans, deserving of all the rights and protections that we are lucky enough to have.
A word I would use to describe First Star would be family.
The people who are here inspire me to be who I want to be. They inspire me to go to college. They inspire me to be open, be able to share, and just to be all that you can be.
My parents would say they don't want me. And when I came here, it felt like family. For the first time I had something.
The First Star Academy program keeps high school age foster youth on track for high school graduation. We do so by focusing on education, life skills, and caregiver engagement.
I want to be something that people can look up to, that people can get behind, to help them find that strength themselves. I just started believing in myself.
My grades before I got into First Star were terrible, and now I am at a 3.8 GPA.
I want to become a lawyer and be an advocate for foster care kids.
You want to be heard.
I like the fact that we have to trust each other and work together.
Because of First Star, I'm going to be graduating high school.
I'll be attending Humboldt State University in the fall.
The University of California, Riverside.
Spelman College.
I'm attending UCLA this fall. Every foster kid deserves a chance like this to be around people who care about them so much. It's amazing.
Everybody has the chance to do whatever they want and has the opportunity to move on in life. And you don't have to worry about one less thing.
Okay. So I hope everyone was able to hear and see. Oh, that was good. Great. That video still to this day makes me a bit teary, only because unless you've been in the shoes of someone that has lost a parent, and I haven't been in the foster care system, but to know that there is this opportunity for young people to feel connected to individuals that are committed to their success over the long term, and actually being a part of it and knowing a lot of these young people. Watching our video is just a reminder of why we do the work that we do. But I hope that provided for everyone a holistic view of who First Star is. I'm going to move quickly through the next two slides, but this, of course, is another incredible slide that reflects the work that we have done throughout the country. You saw in the video that we have academies throughout the country, so we don't have one yet in the Boston area. We would like to have one there. We're working on it. But if we sort of start west and move east, we have an academy at UCLA. We have an academy up north in Sacramento at CSU Sacramento, further south at CSU San Bernardino. And as we move west, we have an academy at Arizona State University, University of Utah, Loyola University, Chicago, Illinois State University, University of Miami, where Kilan is, University of Central Florida. And as we move up north, West Virginia, we have an academy. We have an academy at Kid State in Ohio, Rowan and Rutgers in New Jersey, and we are reestablishing our academy in New York. And so that is where we do our work throughout the country when we think about our direct service model. We do have one in the UK. Thank you. You have done your research. So across the pond, we have two academies, one at St. Mary's and another one at Winchester. I, of course, work closely with the ED of First Star UK. Thank you for calling me out on that one.
You're among friends, Lyndsey. So definitely we did some homework.
I'm happy about that. And we've had also incredible outcomes out of the UK too. But you guys have had a chance to ruminate on the slide. And so you've seen that the different colleges that our students were accepted to or have been accepted to over the past 2 years. The academy model. So what we do is it's a 4-year continuous program. We have monthly academies, and what that looks like is every month the students come to the university campus for 6 to 8 hours of intense support. It's academic support, it's life skills support, it's team building. And one of the threads that we don't often mention, but is critical to this population, is that we provide therapeutic support and approaches in all that we do. So there's restorative justice, there are circles, there's group counseling, etc., that happens when we're working with our youth. We have, of course, intensive case management. So while we are not with the students once a month, our director and their team work with those young people in their school settings. They remain in communication with them. They will go to the courthouse and sit in a hearing with that young person to be there as a support system. And so that's a part of our case management that occurs over the course of the 4 years. Curriculum, again, it's adaptable, but we have a specific curriculum that focuses on math and ELA, and that is to ensure that young people are prepared to take the SAT and be successful on the assessment. But also throughout every year, we focus on particular strands and standards that are specific to their learning for that academic year. We, of course, prepare young people for independence. More often than not, because we work with teenagers in the child welfare system, the chance of them being adopted or ending up in kinship care or guardianship, meaning that they are no longer officially a part of the child welfare system, are pretty low. Once a young person enters the system and remains in the system until they're a teenager, the chances of them exiting the system without their family unit is incredibly high. And so we know that a part of our program has to prepare young people for the new world of what it means to be a young adult. And then, of course, as we mentioned, there's long-term involvement, which is our case management. It is focused on what the youth would like to do, what their goals are over time, and we support them on that throughout the 4 years. Plus, when we include the Alumni Academy, or I'm sorry, the Alumni Program. Again, we talked about our Saturday academies and our residential summers. So every summer, students come to campus for 2 to 4 weeks, intensive residential program. Imagine what it's like to have teenagers on a campus for 4 weeks is the goal. And that's what generally all of our academies accomplish every summer. So for 4 weeks, we have our young people on campus 24/7. We work again, academics, social emotional, team building, physical activity, internships when that's available, and college coursework when that's available. And another exciting component here is that we hire our staff that works for the summer academy, and we have a 1-to-3 ratio. We generally have about 30 students on campus at a time. That is a cohort size. Our staff are undergrad or graduate students at the university, many of whom have backgrounds similar to our youth. So they're first gen, they're former foster youth, they might be African American, they might be Latino, they might have other intersections that our youth also have, because we want our young people to see themselves in the youth coaches that we hire. Scholar success. So this, of course, is one of our proudest slides, and that is First Star graduates our youth. 99% of our youth graduate from the First Star program. And you'll see some variations in this number from different documents, because some of them, at times it represents the moment, how many people have graduated that year, and other times it represents an average number of over time, this is how many we have graduated. But you won't see this number dip beyond 98%. So we graduate a significant number of our youth from our program. We send 91% on to college. The majority of those youth go on to four-year colleges, not community college, and that's about a 60 to 40 margin there. When you look at just general population, about 82% of Americans, teenagers, graduate from high school, and about 2/3 of us go on to college. For foster youth across the country, 1 out of every 2 will graduate high school. And of those that graduate, 10% will pursue college. And the third sort of section that's not here is how many complete. Well, out of American, just sort of that first row there, about 1/3 of Americans will ultimately graduate and complete their undergraduate degree, somewhere between 30 and 40%. Well, for foster youth, we're at 3%. And it's approaching 3%. It isn't 3% itself. So we know that the work that we do is valuable and absolutely needed, so that we can make significant and real change in the lives of many more young people that are coming from challenging backgrounds, in this case, having to endure the child welfare system as teenagers. And that is our presentation, just in terms of First Star Academies, just so that everybody has a holistic view of the work that we do. And Kilan will jump into, of course, our 15th Academy, and that is our virtual National STEAM Academy.
Awesome. So thank you for that wonderful introduction, Lyndsey. I saw a post on Instagram about how to have a peaceful meeting, and it said to tape your cat to the wall. And I just am like dealing with a kitten right now. So excuse me if you see ears pop up on screen, that is what's happening. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the First Star National STEAM Academy, which is, as Lyndsey said, a virtual learning program that was launched in the beginning of this year. Technically last year, but really took off in the beginning of this year. So I'm going to start off with how the STEAM Academy came about. So our motto is that we are led by technology and grounded in social justice. And that's really because of the events of 2020, where we saw the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw a renewed energy and conversation around racial justice. And all of this was happening when we had more of a capacity to pay attention because we were at home and we were in isolation. And so the STEAM Academy really exists at the intersection of those two. We acknowledge that digital learning, whether or not we, liked it in the beginning, is definitely something that's here to stay. And when done well, is something that makes learning more accessible for various types of people. But also that we can no longer pretend like the work that we do in the digital space and in education is separate from the social justice issues that plague our country. And so with those two things in mind, the First Star National STEAM Academy was born, and I serve as the director of the program. So I'm gonna get into the team first, who does it, and then what we do. So I am the director. I lead program logistics and collaborations and partnerships. I recruit speakers and report and evaluate program impacts. So we focus on speakers who are in STEAM spaces, who are working to, advance our world in really special ways, and who are open to sharing that journey with our scholars. And so That's one aspect of things, but the other aspect is, of course, to once we have those speakers, to get them in front of our youth, to coordinate the meetings, to make sure that they have access and knowledge of cool presentation tools like Prezi, to make sure their presentations are interactive and fun, and that it's, not just another Zoom meeting. We also have a curriculum partner organization that basically will take a conversation that we're having about, say, right now we're in the science of sports, that's our season theme, and assist scholars or facilitate scholars taking a deeper dive into the topic. And this will make more sense when I talk exactly about our program and what we do. But essentially, we've contracted an organization. Right now, it's Team Forward Academy, who really gets into the interactive, hands-on portions of the work. And we also have STEAM Academy peer mentors on board. So our peer mentors are younger than I think anyone in this call. They are closer to the age of the scholars, and that's on purpose. We want them to be relatable. We want them to have shared backgrounds with our youth where possible. And so right now we have 3 peer mentors. Actually, last season we had 5. One has transitioned onto First Star's board because she's that dynamic. And one had other obligations. But now we have 2 West Coast peer mentors, 1 East Coast peer mentor, 2 have a science background, 1 has a background in education and with the foster care system. And so the idea behind these peer mentors is that they can support students socio-emotionally and really work with them on a closer level to understand educational opportunities in STEAM, such as scholarships that are available if they decide this is something they want to pursue in college. So I've talked about who we are. Now, what do we do? What do all these people that I've just talked about actually come together to execute? So we have 2 pillars of our programming. Those are our Tech Talks, which are held monthly, and our STEAM Labs, which are held more than once per month. And essentially, our Tech Talks focus on having a representative STEAM professional share their experience. So what is it that you do? How did you get there? How did you even find out that that's where you wanted to go? And also, in what ways has your identity influenced your journey and, you getting from your interest into the career or the purpose that you walk in now? And the other part is the STEAM Labs, which are facilitated by our curriculum partner, that are hands-on activities that take a deeper dive into the subject matter that the Tech Talk speaker will talk about. And one of our first speakers was actually a geneticist, Dr. Janina Jeff, who's also a Spelman alum. She has a podcast called In Those Genes, and I think that the best way for you to understand why she was such a phenomenal speaker who represented all that we were looking for is just to share a little bit about her talk. Oh, is it gonna play? Okay. Oh, I don't think, let me see. Usually it pops right up and plays, but give me a moment and I will share the link. If you are interested in checking out any of our Tech Talks outside of Janina's, which I'm going to share with you in a moment, there's actually all live on our YouTube channel. So if you look at the First Star Academy's YouTube channel, you will find our Tech Talks. So I'm going to start here.
Janina Jeff. I am a bioinformatician. And what that means is that, the shorthand of what that means is, like in this picture, I actually am a scientist that does most of my work computationally. And I'll talk about a little bit of reason of why that is. But my focus is on genetics. And I started to be interested in genetics mostly because people would ask me this central question. And the question that people would ask me, someone needs to mute, I hear some background noise. The question that people would ask me was, what are you? And, I find it such an interesting question because I think that race as a social construct has become so part of our humanity and who we are that we have this question if we can't categorize people into these predefined races that were randomly created. And so this question of what you are, or what are you, is really a question that speaks to that, speaking to people trying to find a place to put you into a category based off of physical characteristics that people call race, which is not a real thing. But I really try to study this question in the context of biology, and more specifically in the context of genetics. And as said earlier, I host a podcast called In Those Genes, which is a podcast that uses genetics to help us understand our identities, the histories of our identities, but also the futures of our identities. So we'll play a clip from that podcast now.
Just because I'm tall and black doesn't mean I'm somehow genetically programmed to play basketball.
So who do you mix with anyway? Are you Spanish? You from Africa? Like where are you from?
My hair curly because I got Indian in my family.
Well, a bit. What you mean?
That's just a small snippet of some of the questions and things that we hear in the Black community when people ask, what are you? It's either associated with your skin color or associated with your hair. But really, the answer to this question is very simple, and it's something that we all can have the same answer to. And the answer is, we are all human. So we are human. And by definition, that means that we are 99.9% the same. In fact, there's only 0.1% that makes us different. And that 0.1% that makes us different is exactly what I have done through my career and what I have used in my career. So in the pilot episode of the podcast, we explore this question. What is the genome? And as I said earlier, I'm a geneticist. So what I do is I study that 0.1% that makes us different, that is comprised of our entire genomes, which by definition, all of us share 99.9% of our genomes. But what is the genome?
So I'm going to stop it there. And, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to stop it there. Yeah. Okay, there we go. And, you know, the purpose in sharing that was really to make sure that, you know, you understood some of what you might not get from a traditional scientific talk, that we encourage our speakers to weave into what they share with us. So Dr. Jeff defines herself as a geneticist because the work that she does in genetics is inextricable from her existence as a Black woman. And so that's why I chose to share her talk in particular, because she really leaned into that. But I should also note that sometimes the tech talk is an opportunity for our speakers to learn as well, because they're not necessarily used to having conversations about their work as it intersects with social justice. And so we had a few speakers who were challenged to think about their identity and the way it's influenced their journey, but also the implications of the work that they do when it comes to social justice. And the STEAM labs, which are another part that, you know, I'll refrain from showing or sharing because a lot of that is interactive and we don't want to show too much scholar information. But the STEAM labs in particular in this situation, in this season, they require pre-registration. Students must provide, or their guardians must provide an address. They receive mail, and in that package that they receive in the mail is an activity, 2 activities actually, that complement the conversation that we're having. And so there are so many types of activities and so many different things that we've covered that I feel like I would have to, you know, you would have to go back. But we've had scholars explore space. We've had scholars explore nutrition. We've had scholars explore artificial intelligence, and it's all been related back to a professional that they heard from. And that experience has largely, you know, had a positive reception. So 50% of scholars said that the First Star National STEAM Academy programming that they attended was relevant to their schoolwork. And because we serve scholars from different age groups, it's really challenging to make sure it aligns with everyone's schoolwork. We serve youth in the 9th to 12th grade. So for some of them, they're going to be right on target. For some of them, it will be earlier or further than what they're currently covering. But many of them did report that it helped. And 87.5% of scholars reported that they feel like they know what scientists and engineers do. And that was something that we were really happy about, because while it is great to go to college, while it is great to have that ambition, what you decide to pursue in college is just as important. And having some type of sense that you know something that you're interested in, or at least that you know the entirety of what people are telling you that you should be interested in, is really, really important. And that's actually it from me. So at this point, if you'd like to see a Tech Talk Live, we actually have one today, so you could register at the link that I just shared in the chat. But until we skedaddle over to that, we're happy to take questions from anyone who might have them.
That's wonderful. This is the first talk, by the way, where we had a dual presentation from two representative from an organization. So thank you for tag teaming that. There's so much I think we can get into and extract. Lyndsey, question for you, just high level. How do you set up these academies? So you said the STEAM Academy is the 15th one, right? So for those who are wondering, right, how does someone become a member of your federation, shall we say?
Sure. That's a great question. So we work with the university leadership, and usually what happens is we have executive leaders, so your chancellor, your president, your VP of a division reaches out to First Star, or we have already cultivated a relationship with that individual, and they ask us to present the program to their executive team. We provide the presentation, we provide the follow-up, of course, our MOA, the cost, etc. And then from there, if a university is interested, we get sort of a soft yes. And then we work with community partners, which includes child welfare. Will child welfare get on board? Are they interested in being a part of the academy? Do they want to support their students in this way? And if so, once we have child welfare on board, with the university on board, we can proceed with operationalizing the academy. And of course, that's a lot of sort of behind the scenes work that has to take place in order to build out a program within a department at the university. We generally find ourselves in the Division of Student Affairs. Within Student Affairs, we're in EOPS offices, or we are in departments that generally serve your under-resourced populations at that university. And that's where they will create and establish the First Star Academy within that university. So when you look at an org chart, we actually are dotted line to First Star, and it is a solid line to the university, because the university ultimately takes on the First Star program as their own university endeavor. And so that's how it usually happens. We have either a relationship with the university leader, or that individual is brought into our network. Peter and I then fly out to the university pre-COVID, and we would sit with the president and his executive team, discuss the academy, and if they were open to the idea, we would proceed with building out a stakeholder group to ensure that we had the appropriate resources in the community to ensure viability and sustainability over the long term for the academy. We also, of course, have to have a particular number of foster youth in the community. So we look at a 45-minute radius of the university, and we should have at least 250 young people in the foster care system to ensure that we're able to recruit enough youth to participate in the program.
I see. So, but the STEAM Academy, though, is virtually based, right?
Right.
Okay, so how do you figure out the radius for that? if you do want.
You have access to internet, you can participate. And I'll let Kilan answer that question, but we've made it so that everyone can access it if they'd like to access it.
Right. So whereas the brick and mortar First Star Academies have geographic boundaries, the First Star National STEAM Academy is designed as a virtual program to reach those who we can't yet. So For example, there is no First Star Academy in Georgia. So scholars in Georgia have the option to log into the STEAM Academy. Same thing with the states that aren't lucky enough, all of the rest of the states that aren't lucky enough to have a First Star Academy yet. And so we also encourage beyond that siblings who didn't quite qualify for the First Star Academy in their area or haven't been recruited yet to participate as an introduction to First Star. And it's really, really just kind of open to anyone who wants to experience the program.
Great. Nisha, could you unmute and ask your question? I would love to just hear some other voices except mine.
Thank you so much for sharing. Everything that you do with this organization is really inspiring. I'm a little bit more curious about the requirements, like how are the scholars selected, particularly when some of them even mentioned that, they constantly move, play from places or families. So how is that dynamic and selection?
Yeah, so what we do is with the child welfare partner, we look for the middle 50. So we don't cherry pick. We don't want the top foster youth in the system, in the city, necessarily a part of the program, because we feel like they're going to get a lot of support from folks because they're sort of seen as like the shining star. We really want the middle 50 that we know that with a little bit of additional encouragement and support, they can make it through that hump of graduating high school and really be thoughtful around what their future goals might be. So when we work with child welfare, we let them know, GPA, they could have a 1.0 GPA, but I will say mindset is important to us. So we do want young people that they may not know what college is, but they're curious about it. They're open to the idea, even if they're like, I don't think I'm gonna go to college, or I don't think I can make it to college, but I'm curious about it. And so that's what we do. We have an application for them, but it doesn't have a GPA requirement. It doesn't have a clubs and organizations requirement. It's just simply one that we're able to pull their information, understand a bit more about them. We have one question on the application, and that is, it's your 100th birthday, and you're blessed enough to have a friend that also has lived 100 years, one of your good friends, and they are saying something about you. What would they say about you? And so sometimes from those responses, we're able to glean that this young person is really thinking about what their future life could look like. And they're thinking about it through the lens of academics, or thinking about it through the lens of just moving into just more of a positive, resourceful space as adults. And so so that's what we look at. So there aren't really any general requirements. We look at the middle 50. Child welfare then gives us a list of students. We then start meeting with those students and we bring them into the program.
Do you get some feedback by any chance from their families, or at that point, or whoever is their support system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. You know what's interesting? And maybe it's not interesting. As researchers, you guys know that you sort of move into an environment and you already know some of the responses that you might get from people. One of the things that, and I heard from the network during one of our last monthly webinars, and it is that sometimes caregivers, because the child welfare system can be so cumbersome and can be so difficult to navigate at times, they sometimes view First Star as an additional arm of the child welfare system. Someone else that's going to be in my home, sort of spying on me, telling me what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well. And that has actually been an issue with some of our caregivers. We have to tell them, we are not child welfare. We are not reporting on you. This is really a separate, supplemental, some people consider the academy as one that supplants the educational experience of many of our youth to really get them to where we need them to go. But that's been a concern is wait, just how close are you to the social worker and sort of to that sort of more of a surveillance type environment? And we aren't. And so once we explain that to our caregivers, we ultimately establish much stronger relationships with them.
Nice, thank you.
Absolutely.
I think this is great because you started talking about some of the challenges you're facing, right? And I think in any initiative you're building, there's always some unforeseen challenges that you run into. Could you share some, like one or two that you've run into in the past couple of years, a significant challenge for the organization?
Yeah, sure. So I'll share organization-wide a few challenges that we've experienced, and then Kilan can share some of the acute challenges that she's experienced with STEAM Academy. So of course, I think the elephant in the room is COVID, and the fact that we had to transition our model from being in person, highly relational, highly, we say high touch model, to a virtual environment where there's literally no connection, right, beyond what the screen is able to provide. And that happened for a year and a half. That was an intense challenge for us because those of you that spend time reviewing articles and research around K-12 and the impact of COVID on K-12 learning, you all have been able to pull from those research articles that there was lack of student engagement. There is a learning loss that continues to grow for many of our marginalized populations. And our foster youth were, if it's a cough or the cold for our general population, it's the flu for our foster youth. So they were completely disengaged from the school environment, many of them. Many of them have experienced extensive learning loss. And so the First Star Academies felt the same thing. There was a pushback. I don't want to be a part of this virtual environment. I like it when I can see you and I can go to the campus, but I'm not doing it if it's going to be on the computer. I'm over it, right? I'm not doing it for school, so I'm not going to do it for you. And so we had to work really hard to overcome that hurdle. And we became really creative in how we overcame that hurdle. I will say that the directors in the First Star program or in the First Star network are incredible professionals, all of them holding masters in social work and in education. And they were able to take their learnings as professionals, what they were hearing in this current COVID landscape, to increase engagement. And how did they do it? A few directors partnered with HelloFresh and sent HelloFresh boxes to students' homes, and they cooked together through the Zoom interface. They did painting, it was a paint and sip, but they were sipping lemonade, of course. So they were able to do these activities that engaged our youth in a way that made them feel like they belong again. And that's what we do at the First Star Academy. Our students belong. And that's one of the reasons why they work so hard for the academy, for their peers, and for themselves, because they see themselves belonging now to this space that has elevated their thoughts around what they can actually do and achieve over time. And so that's been, of course, a significant challenge, was through our direct service work, making sure that we can maintain engagement in our scholar population. If we're looking at it through an operational standpoint and more of a CEO standpoint, we had to consider funding. First Star is, 100% funded through philanthropy, whether it's foundations that we have now, created really solid relationships with, or it's individuals in the community that are able to give to First Star, or it is individual donors that give, case-by-case basis, celebrations or activities that we have that we're promoting. We had to be really mindful of that. As you know, we moved into a recession when COVID started. And so when there's a recession, people give less because they're thinking about their families and they're thinking about what might happen to them and their jobs, et cetera. And so we also had to navigate those realities too, right? And that was challenging. We took on a draconian perspective. So we really decreased the amount of output in terms of cost associated with sort of the normal day-to-day items of an office or a team. And we presented it to, of course, our team to make sure we were all on the same page, everybody understood. And as a result, we were able to weather the storm. And so I'm really excited and proud to say that First Star is in a solid financial state. And we were able to maintain that throughout the pandemic because of having as leaders, you have to be mindful of all parts of your organization. And that part was one that was clearly resonating throughout the business community. And how do we do that? And so we took those steps that I mentioned. So those were two, I think, really important and significant challenges that we experienced over the past 2 years.
And Lyndsey already beautifully articulated essentially one of the challenges of the STEAM Academy, which was some people went about virtual learning in a very, very lackluster way. And it left scholars really, I think, jaded with the experience. They just didn't want to really be a part. And we're still fighting that and battling that. And so one conversation that we always have is, okay, what's the value add? How are we going to set ourselves apart? We have an incentives program for scholars who participate in our academy where they can earn gift cards, they can earn STEAM kits, they can earn blogging essentials. And so that's all, just by virtue of being present. But then we also, as I mentioned, transitioned our STEAM labs from things that were purely virtual in terms of coding and things like that to activities that required a kit be sent, that require scholars to have a little lab bench set up. That just makes it a lot different than what they would get if they were a part of other programs. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to set ourselves apart. And so I think that's the biggest challenge to date of the STEAM Academy, just battling the misperceptions of those scholars and caregivers and educators who have been jaded by a less than satisfactory experience with virtual learning.
You're muted.
Sorry. Do you track your thinking about the outcomes here once they leave your ecosystem? How far out do you track them, the students, that is, after they leave the First Star family?
Yeah, so we do. So we developed our alumni program about 2 years ago. So we were not tracking formally our scholars up until that point, but we have started. And what we do is once a young person leaves the First Star program, we invite them to join the alumni program. Through that invitation, it requires that they complete it. It's not an application, but a survey that gives us some pretty decent information so that we can sort of contextualize where they are in terms of their next steps, but also so that we can adapt programming accordingly, according to what their needs are, and also just sort of the achievements that they are experiencing. Of our students, we have approximately 60% respondent data that of the youth that graduate the program that remain a part of the alumni program. And so we're excited about that. We'd like for it to be even higher, but that's approximately how many youth ultimately transition to the alumni program. It's a low touch model. A lot of it is communication via newsletters, et cetera. But we were able to create an emergency fund. And in the past 18 months, we have given over $25,000 to our youth in need. All of those youth are alumni. Many of them housing insecurity, transportation issues. When COVID initially happened and universities were scrambling to figure out what to do with young people on campus, well, for most of your young people on campus, they could go home to their parents. Some of them didn't want to, of course. Some of them, were pushing that. I don't want to go back home to them. But they had parents and family to go home to. Well, when you have foster youth on a campus and they're attending a 4-year, that 4-year residential setting becomes their home for 4 years. Well, if you are telling folks that they have to leave in 2 weeks and they don't have a parent to go back home to because their parent might still be dealing with a drug addiction, still may be unable to care for their, now early adult, young adult child, where do they go? So we were able to help youth with transportation to get from that university to a placement, right? Whether they had to go to a cousin's home or a friend's home. We were able to help with first and last month's rent. We were able to help with deposits so that our young people as much as possible, we can mitigate some of the burdens and challenges that COVID was imposing. So I'm just really excited to share that we were able to give about $25,000 in the past 18 months to support their needs, that many of those needs they weren't expecting, because a lot of them lost their jobs. They lost their campus jobs along with their housing. So, so that those are some of the resources and ways that we've been able to support our alums and the alumni program. But overall, it's a holistic program. Like I said, we're 2 years plus in, and we hope to be able to do more as we continue to grow it.
Yeah, because I don't know if you know this, because you just started that, that graph you showed us, where the third one, where you're able to tell from those who have gone through First Star, how many of them are they graduating now from college, right? And then beyond. So I think you get that data soon enough, I'm sure.
Yes. What we have seen with anecdotal data is that about 25% have graduated from college. So of course, not as high as we'd like it to be, but much higher than the 3% of the national number of young people in care that actually graduate from college.
And that's really the true comparison, right? You want it to be higher, yes, but you're comparing to those students that don't go through your program, right? And keeping that. I think that's for us practitioners, right? We're always trying to figure out evaluation, which we really didn't get too deep into. It's a big piece, and I encourage you all to read their annual reports. So I love reading annual reports. I'm really weird, but it's something that I encourage you to do that when you get a chance, because you garner insights, and I know Lyndsey and your team probably worked really hard to put that data in there. So I encourage you all to take a read. Before I ask my final question to our guests, anybody want to jump in with a question?
Thank you very much for the wonderful talk and the excellent work that you're doing. So I'm just curious, because you've mentioned like 99% graduated from high school, but around 91% pursued college. So I'm just like curious, like those who didn't go to college, did they choose to just find a work, or was it their choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. So of those that chose not to go to college, and I just want to really quickly respond, Kilan has to jump off because our tech talk is happening. So maybe we can transition to that for some of you on the call. That would be fantastic. But thank you, Kilan. So what our youth have done is a lot of them decided to go right into the workforce or into military. So we've had now a contingent of youth that are going into the military or just going right into the workforce. So that's what we've seen. When we look at our alumni data, how many of them sort of are in this limbo experience of not, maybe becoming homeless or not moving into the workforce, that of those that did not go to college, it's pretty low number, but about 10% when we look at the alumni data that just had trouble figuring out what their next step would be, and are at that point, we're in a limbo type situation. But in those cases, we reach out to them and we try to provide supports to get them back on track to either job, career, college.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I would add, so John, I don't know where you're calling us from, but either you're in Israel or the Philippines.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where.
But I'm going home on October 25. I'm finishing.
That's great. So just for you, Lyndsey, we have a practitioner network from around the world, people who are, again, building programs for their respective communities. And he was one of our former fellows. So yeah, that's so Lyndsey, my final question, I want to borrow a page from your book in terms of the questions you asked the scholars. So 50 years from now, okay, looking back, what do you want people to say about First Star? What do you see? Yeah.
I think that is, I think, leaders are always thinking about this because we want to ensure that with or without our existence in terms of having the helm of the organization, we still want the organization to be solid and strong and productive over time. And so I've actually shared, not 50 years, I haven't projected 50 years out, but I have shared with our network 2 years ago, pre-COVID, we were in DC for our conference. And I showed them all of the stats around, 50% graduate high school, 10% go to college, and we broke down those numbers, right? What does that number actually mean? So if we, on any given sort of day or maybe academic year, you have about 25,000 18-year-olds in the foster care system that should be graduating from high school. So if 50% of them graduate, let's make it 30,000 so it's a little easier. We have 15,000 that graduate high school. Well, of the 15 that graduate high school that are actually eligible to go to college, 10% then go to college, right? And then from that 10%, 3% graduate. This number ends up in the hundreds per year of people that graduate from, leave the child welfare system to pursue higher ed. Well, I told my team that if we can continue to, first of all, fully understand our work so that we are supporting complete cohorts of 30 youth, and if we can scale our work in our areas of funding permits, in 5 to 10 years, First Star could be responsible for half of those youth graduating from college in the United States, because we graduate so many of our youth from high school that are ready to go on to college. So in 50 years, wouldn't it be incredible if First Star, along with the coalition of other organizations, I am a firm believer in working with others, but if we can, in 50 years, turn that 3% number into 6%, right? We have to be mindful of what is possible. We can't jump to 20 or 30%. But if we could, over time, chip away at that 97% that don't graduate from college, so that 3% moves up to 6%, moves up to 10%. First Star would be incredibly happy, because that is the work that we do with our high schoolers. We're a pre-college program. We want to instill the importance of post-secondary and the options that exist outside of that space. So we know everybody doesn't have to go to college, right? There's technical careers, vocational, et cetera, and that's fine as well. But to be able to do that for more youth in the foster care system, and to actually have these very, sort of quantitative conversations around what is the actual number that we're focusing on? How do we build out a system that allows us to achieve that output? In 50 years, it would be fantastic if that number goes up to 6%, 10%, and we can attribute that to the work that we do day in and day out throughout the First Star program with our academies and with our directors. That's what I would love to see, and as an organization, we would love to achieve over time.
I'm inspired, and I truly believe that you guys can make it. If this video today, this recording, you never know where these things go, right? Who watches this, and for those of you watching in the future, and you are either a donor, right, philanthropist,
absolutely,
reach out to First Star, get in touch, figure out how you can help them, because we will definitely be looking at how we can help as well, like grants and making sure that you are connected with folk that have those means, right, to push you along that journey. Because I, like you, firm believer in collaboration, right, and working together as a team, because I think the pie is so big, it's absolutely massive, right, and we can all contribute a little bit on that. Lyndsey, this was fantastic. I'm so thankful. Oh, the report, she shared the report in the chat there. We'll put this link in the YouTube as well so people can read that report. I'm a big fan. I really believe people should read reports of organizations. They're just treasure trove of data and information that's just freely available. Okay, so that concludes our talk for today. I'm just so inspired with so much energy. I would like to leave you all with our next talk here that I'm sharing. On November 13th, join us for our pitch day. So we're going to be releasing our fellows that will be launching 5 new initiatives into the ecosystem of STEM programming. And I firmly believe that we need to be innovating in this space, continually trying new ideas and experimenting. So come by and watch these new fellows attempt to launch these new ideas out in the world. And with that, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Lyndsey.